Good morning, this is Everett's Watercolors. Welcome to my classroom and studio. This morning I'm doing a real quick study here. This is a reference I have over here. It's a picture of a wind-blown scene with a tree with the wind really blowing strongly. So I'm going to try to capture that mood. And I'm only going to use my Holbein brushes, which are synthetic, but I'm just going to use the round brushes. I've got the this is number 16 round synthetic brush. This is a number 6 round synthetic brush, and this is the number 4 rigger. Now, I usually use flats when I do a landscape with a little bit of round brushes for detail, but today I'm just going to just play with the round brushes to do this scene. So let me get started and show you what I'm going to do. First of all, use the big round brush. This is the one that really holds a lot of water and a lot of paint. And I'm going to do the sky with this. Use this to do the sky. Pick a little bit of cerulean blue, a little touch of cobalt. Now the sky is going to be very simple because it's just wide open space. I just want to get some color up there. So what I'm going to do is start out with at the top. Now I use a round brush, and by brushing on the sides, what I'm doing is I'm getting the same effect that I would with a flat brush. So using the side of the brush here instead of the point, which I can do, but instead of using the side of the brush, I'm using instead of using the tip of the brush, I'm using the side of the brush. And I'll pick up here. I start out with a cobalt blue at the top, a little bit darker, then I'm going to come down and use, and I'm going to leave some paper here, white paper showing, to give me the idea, the impression of some clouds up there in the sky. And I'll come down here and do a little bit over here, and add a little water to that, get a little bit lighter as I come down on the horizon. And just go right across here, right behind this tree. So very simple sky. Just get some blue paint on there, a little bit of cerulean blue and cobalt blue, just to give me a nice sky color. Okay, get a little bit darker up here in the top. While it's still wet, you can always add paint. So I'm going to add a little bit darker up here in the top in this right section over here. Okay, just to give me a little variety. Okay, now as far as the landscape goes, I think I'm gonna start with just getting the base color down here. And the base color, you can see, as I can see here, is kind of a greenish with some brown in it, like a dirt road, like dirt and rocks and so forth. So I'm going to just put in some. I'm going to use the same brush. Mix up a little bit of a yellow ochre, and I've got 3 greens in my palette here. So I'm going to use a green number 2. Green number 2 right here, which has got medium green. And I'm going to take that yellow ochre and green and kind of just go in here and put in some color at the bottom. And there'll be a shadow here, but here I'm using the side of the brush again, just to get a mixture here. I'm going to pick up a little bit of cobalt, a little bit of burnt sienna. Get some brown down in there. It's kind of a rocky foreground with some grass and stuff like that. Now up here, that yellow ochre, there's some gravel or some dirt up here, so I want to get that color in there. And pick up a little more of that green, mixed in with that burnt sienna. And I can go right across that tree because I'm going to come back in with a darker color on that anyway. So okay, what I did there was just put in some color at the bottom here. I go back and add into that and kind of give me a textury landscape there at the bottom. Okay, I'll lay that aside, that brush aside. Let me pick up my number 6 round. I'm going to go ahead and put the trunk in and use a little bit of burnt sienna mixed in with a little bit of cobalt blue or ultramarine blue. Give me a dark brown. Now I'm going to go in there and just put in some shapes here for this tree. I'm just going to start that because I'll go back in. It's still a little bit wet here, but I can still get some color in. I'm just kind of putting in some shapes to get me started here. These are the main trunks of this tree. So what I do is I usually get the main shape going, the main colors, the main shape. Okay, and I'll lay that aside. Now the real workhorse here today is we're going to use the rigger brush. This is a number 4 rigger, Holbein, natural hair. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick up some of that green and brown mixture and go into the tree. Now the rigger, again, I use the side of the brush. I can use the end of the brush here, but I'm getting those parts of the tree up here which are blowing in the wind. Now there's greens, and I'm using side strokes here, and I'm pushing it. Look, I'm pushing the brush. I'm dragging the brush. I'm even doing a little circular motion here to get some some shapes on the end. But the rigger to me is a very versatile. It's not just for making fine lines. You can do, because it's so flexible. It moves. It gives me lots of opportunities to move the brush around and get some nice strokes, some nice shapes, edges. That's why I like the rigger brush. It gives me lots of flexibility and opportunity to give me a variety of marks. And that's what brush strokes are. They're marks on the paper. And I can get some real wispy looking edges here on the edge of these branches as they come off the tree. Now the wind's blowing this tree really hard, so I can get a nice feeling here for. Now I'm kind of putting in the basic shapes that I want. Now out here, there's a cloud behind this tree, so I'm getting some of these branches, and there'll be a cloud showing behind this part of the tree here. And the other white paper, again, is going to be clouds, so I can leave white paper showing through the tree. Okay, now that's kind of my initial layout. I've got basic background done and the foreground, and I'm working on a little bit of the trees here. And these branches. Now, I can see there's a little darker value there, so I'll just take that same mix, that burnt sienna, and I'll pick up a little bit of Hooker's green this time, a little darker green. A little darker green, a little bit of brown in it. And I'll go in and I'll put in some of those darker values because there's a shadow here at the bottom here. You got the sun hitting. The sun's coming from my left to my right. So, but the bottom of this tree, branches are going to be a little bit in shadow. So I'll add some of that in there. And then down here, I can bring in some of those shadow patterns in there. Now here I can work with this darker mix. Now I can work a little bit more with the edges. Here's where I use the point of the brush, because here I can get the detail that I want to show those branches as they come off here, come off this tree. Now let's see. I think I'll take some of that yellow ochre, which is a lighter color, and I'll put more of that at the top, because it's a little lighter at the top of this tree. So I'll go ahead and put that in there. Okay. Now I'm gonna lay that aside for a second. Now I'm gonna go back and darken up this trunk. I'll use that mixture I had before, a little ultramarine or cobalt blue mixed in with burnt sienna, give me a dark brown. Then I'll go in, I'll go ahead and darken up these tree trunk. Now the paint has dried, so I can go in there and get the main character here. I'm darkening up the shape. So I'm just going over the area I started here. And now I got an opportunity now to go in and make a little darker mark. Okay, and also now I'll put that down. Going back and forth between brushes. I'll use the rigger with that dark mix, and I can go in through and get some of these finer branches down here. And some of the edges of this tree. And I'll get that darker mix, fill in some of these white spots. I'll go back in later when I get drier on this. The object of when you're doing an object, the object is to give it a lot of texture, and the outline of the shape of the object really defines what it is. Now I'm going to put this shadow pattern in here, and I can use a darker mix of greens and browns, a little bit of Hooker's green mixed in a little bit of burnt sienna. Now I'm going to get that shadow pattern across the ground. And I need a little darker mix, so I'll mix in a little bit of ultramarine to get a nice dark brown. Not necessarily brown, but just a dark color here on the ground. This is going to be the shadow that's going to come across this ground. And it kind of defines the definition of the light that's coming from the left and casting a shadow on the ground. That's always a good characteristic of a landscape, is to give the direction of light by creating a shadow. And there's a little shadow over here from the rocks and from the landscape, a little shadow here in the corner. Again, give a little bit of character. And there's one more shadow. There's a little shadow up here on this rock formation. There's a rock formation here in this landscape. I'll put some of that on here, up here in the top. I'm kind of building a shadow pattern now just around this landscape. And there's a little shadow in here. Okay, now that's going to dry, and I'll come back maybe sometime later and fill in a little bit more detail, but that is really the basic setup that I use to capture this windy tree here blowing in the wind. I can come back and add more detail, but I gotta let this dry. It's really wet. But by using the Holbein round brushes, the number 16 round, the number 4 rigger, and the number 6 round, using the side of the brush and the tip of the brush to capture that shape. I'm really happy with that. But I'll come back later when it's a little bit drier and finish in some of the detail. Okay, now it's dry, but let's see, let me finish this up a little bit. I'm just take the round brush here and mix up a little dark, again, a darker mix. I'm using a little ultramarine, little burnt sienna, using a number 6 round brush this time again. And I'm going to put a little more detail per. So I'm going to drag this brush, hold it sideways now, and just kind of drag it through here and get some of that leafy look, the branches. Just by holding, just by dragging the brush through. This is a round brush technique. Just getting that little texture in there. A little more shadow here at the bottom. Yeah, take that same mix and go down here, maybe get a little detail here in the foreground, just to show little rocks and some shadows here from the ground. You know, I like the way this turned out, and so using the round brush to finish it up. And what I do is just kind of drag this along here to give me some rough texture. Just dragging the brush along to give me some rough texture to break up this foreground just a little bit. A little bumpy here and there. Okay, now that concludes the painting. It's dry. It's finished up now, as far as I'm concerned. Remember, it was just started as a sketch. Wanted to do a little windy look of a tree blowing in the breeze. So sign up to my YouTube channel and subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of my next video, and give me a thumbs up. It helps with my rating. So I'll see you on the next video.